Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the privilege of allowing me to speak here today. And graduates, congratulations, you made it. And I know that many of you have had to overcome many difficulties and along this road to your degree, but you made it. And now you can look ahead for a future that you will benefit from what you have already achieved. And I'm sure as you traveled your journey, you probably learned a lot of life's lessons that you had not learned before. And for me, I began learning my life's lessons at a very young age. I come from New Zealand, where I was born and educated. And when I was 9 years old, my parents finally, after a lot of pestering, allowed me to start climbing mountains with them. And one of our very close friends, a family friend, was Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first person to summit Mount Everest. And my parents told me, well, you can start climbing with us. It was to be Mount Taranaki in the center of the North Island of New Zealand, 8,500 feet high, but it was in the wintertime. And they told me, but you've got to carry your own pack. Nobody else is going to carry it for you. And I came from a household that was quite strict on rules, so I knew that would be that. And so, as you can imagine, halfway up that mountain, my 9-year-old legs turned to lead. I was so tired, I could hardly stand. I thought I could not take another step. But my father kept saying, you don't have to climb this mountain in one long step. Just one step at a time will do it. My mother kept saying, now look, don't look backward, look forward. Look at that summit. Visualize yourself standing on that summit. Visualize yourself as being successful. You can do it. Know that you can do it. See that picture. Keep that picture in your mind. And finally, I did stand on that summit, and that 9-year-old little girl felt as though she was the most important person in the entire world at that time. But I'd made it. And those were two lessons that have carried me through, all the way through my education and my exploration in various sports. And then, then I continued to climb mountains. I learned more and more. Sir Edmund Hillary became my teacher, and I learned a lot of technical climbing techniques. And then I decided that I would enter the sport. Well, after having competed in many other sports, I actually represented 3 countries in track and field. And New Zealand, the country of my birth, Guatemala, where my future husband was a helicopter pilot, and then, of course, the United States once I became a citizen. And also won a world championship in kayaking and skiing. But one day I had an idea that I would like to participate in the sport of luge. Now, I don't like to talk too much about my career as a luger because it does put the stamp of insanity on my lifestyle. But it fascinated me, and I thought, now, I would just love to win that national championship. What an accomplishment that would be in that difficult sport. But I knew it would be a difficult road because I gave myself 2 years, and I knew that I'd have to compete against people who are very, very talented, very good at this. And so I'd learned beforehand, now along my road through climbing mountains and sports, that a goal without a plan is simply a dream. So I knew I had to simply sit down and plan this one out. So I planned the next 2 years in minute detail. I knew what I had to do if I ever had a chance of winning this championship. Well, I continued on according to my plan, and yes, it was basically one step at a time, but in reality it was really one crash after the other, and tried to forget the last crash and go on to the next one. And 2 years later, still in one piece, I finally won that championship. And it was a great lesson to me in perseverance. Thank you. But then, of course, mountain climbing was really my first love. So I continued climbing mountains, attacking more technical routes as I did. And then I climbed Mount Denali in Alaska, my first mountain over 20,000 feet. After that, I went overseas and climbed many mountains around the world. And this was my first love was mountain climbing. I just really loved the high altitude and just looking out there in that beautiful, pristine air. And of course, I live in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, and this is where I was training for all of these endeavors of sports and the mountain climbing. Then one day I decided that, I've got all these lifetime experiences, the things that I have learned, the setting of goals, planning for success, one step at a time, always visualizing myself as being successful, never looking back, always looking forward. And I thought, I need to send this message, give this message in my lifestyle. I need to share it with students, K through 12, in a program I called Adventure Classroom. And up to date, I've spoken to over 1 million children, students, K through 12, in schools, actually in schools since 1988. And it's been a very rewarding journey that I've taken, and this is, of course, is what I intend doing for the rest of my life. But then I decided what should be the first program for Adventure Classroom. So I decided to ski alone to the magnetic North Pole. And of course, I knew that this would be a challenge. I really needed to plan on this one because there was no equipment available. I was really a pioneer of sorts. And so as I bought an Inuit dog who'd been trained to keep polar bears out of the village, to keep the humans safe, because there'd be a large population of polar bears along my route. And so now the plan was there, the goal was there, I knew what I needed to do. But I found that people were so negative. People would say to me, oh, you're not going to make this. The polar bears are going to hunt you down and they'll kill you, they eat you. And then they would tell me, well, you'll fall through the thin ice into the Arctic Ocean and you'll drown. And the one that really got me was, well, you're a woman and you're going alone. You can't do that. And I thought, now, why not? First of all, I'm 50 years old. I know I'm a woman. And yes, I can do this alone. There's no mystery here. And so I set out. My family, of course, were very supportive. I set out with my dog, Charlie. I called him Charlie. He walked at my side to protect me from bears. And of course, of 7 polar bear up-close encounters later, storms, and yes, I did have to walk across some very thin ice. But finally, Charlie and I made it to the pole. I was unresupplied and unsupported. I'd reached my goal, the first program for Adventure Classroom. Thank you. And then, of course, my husband, who was a helicopter pilot, he retired from flying so he could join me in my work for Adventure Classroom because we were both passionate about what we were doing, just getting these messages into the kids in the schools via my expeditions. So we decided to take on the Sahara. So we actually walked 4,000 miles through 7 countries from Morocco to the Nile River. And this was indeed a very difficult journey. Our camels carried our gear and our water. And at one point we were kidnapped. At another point we were stood up to be executed. Another time we walked through 600 miles of minefields. We were robbed twice. But 7.5 months later we made it, because through all the trials and tribulations we knew that we could do it. We knew that we would one day reach the banks of the Nile River if we could just put one foot in front of the other. And we kept seeing that picture in our minds of the Nile, and we will be there. We told each other this. We talked about the Nile River. We urged ourselves on mentally, even though some days we were so exhausted we were putting in 18-hour days. And so finally we did reach the Nile River, and it was a tremendous victory for us after all those months. We looked like a couple of scarecrows, but we had made it. And then we decided to bring the rainforests of the world into the classroom. So after the Amazon we went and we kayaked 2,000 miles in the Amazon. And as in all expeditions, there's always some trial and tribulation to be overcome. And at one point we were attacked by a swarm of killer bees. And this is not a fun thing to happen to you. It is very bad. We were absolutely swarming with these bees. We were being stung. And we've learned that to deal with the problem of the moment, don't deal with the problems that might eventuate, might never happen. The only way to get rid of the bees was to dive into the water. This is where the piranha live. So, but of course, we figure the piranha are going to have to wait until later. We've got to deal with the bees first. So into the water we went, scraping these bees off. Finally, we got them off. We have our EpiPens ready because we really needed it by this time. Back into our kayaks, we were able to get ourselves. We were in pretty bad shape. We had to help each other. But the crisis was over, and the piranha didn't find us. So the piranha were good neighbors, at least at that time, anyway. And of course, the Amazon is absolutely fascinating. We were able to bring so much information into the classroom. And then I decided that I need to continue, of course, the expeditions, and I will do for the rest of my life. And last November, to celebrate my 80th birthday, I decided that I would walk the entire length of Death Valley from the extreme north to the extreme south. I would do it alone, and I would haul all my gear and my water on a cart behind me, because there is no water in Death Valley. So I had to plan. Now, talk about planning, the goal. Remember, I told you a goal without a plan is only a dream. I knew that I really had to plan this one. How am I going to get all this water? I only weigh 125 pounds. I was pulling a cart starting weight of 185. So it means I really had to train hard. I really had to be prepared for this. So then I set off. And in the middle of the journey, my day food went bad on me, and I was suffering from food poisoning. I had a temperature of 104 degrees. A ranger found me. He said, "You look like death." I thought, well, thank you for the compliment. Not too encouraging. But he said, "I need to take you to the hospital." I said, "Oh, no, no, no. I know I can fight my way through this," because I knew if I quit, I might not restart. But I knew if I kept putting one foot in for the other and keep thinking about the end result, I knew I could fight my way through this temperature. And finally, for 4 days, what I did was just aim for a place about 100 yards ahead of me. Then I'd get there. Then I'd go another 100 and another 100. I kept going, and I knew I could do this. Then finally, by day 6, the problem was gone. I was well again. I was able to pick up the mileage and keep going. And finally, I did arrive at the end of Death Valley. And so now next year, I'm going back again. Thank you. And I discovered in my work in the schools that children don't know very much about the national parks in this country, which I think is somewhat appalling because they're such beautiful treasures. So I have decided that I will walk the length of every national park in the United States, and I will take the information into the classroom, and you will learn about your national parks whether you like it or not. You will learn because I'm going to go there, and I will bring it to you. And so those are my future plans. So Adventure Classroom, I continue on and keep on going. But I know that you have set your goals and you've made your plans, and now you can look ahead at your life and think about the goals that you want to set in your future. Your education is going to make a big difference. Now you can go ahead. You know that you've reached this very important goal in your life, and you can go ahead and you can inspire others to do the same that you have done. That you can always teach other people, this is what I did. You too can do it, because we're all very special. Every single one of us are special. We're all the same way. We are special. We have special gifts. We have special talents. We just have to find those talents, go after them, and always think of success. Look ahead, never look back. Well, thank you very much for listening to my story. Thank you.